G'day everyone, welcome to Adventuring Addicts episode 1. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can make your very own scatter terrain out of cheap and easy to find materials just like this. Step 1. Go ahead and get some EVA foam floor tiles. I purchased mine from Kmart for a pack of 4 for 10 bucks. I got some scissors and a container to store it all in. Go ahead and rip the sides off. We're going to use these parts as they're the smallest bits and easiest to cut for now. Cutting these little wedges off the edges, you'll still be able to use them, creating a rectangular shape, roughly 1 inch long. I found out that the easiest way to cut the EVA foam was with a pair of sharp scissors. You're going to continue this process all the way down the strip, and once you get to the oft cut jagged pieces, you can go ahead and cut off the rough strip and pretty much salvage what rectangle parts you can. We're going to use 3mm cardstock as our base. Here you can see I'm marking out 6 inches. Go ahead now and cut a natural shape with a pair of scissors. I found it was a bit too difficult because it is quite thick, so I've got a retractable knife handy. I'm going to be using the retractable knife here, as you can see, as I shave down the sides. I know this as a chamfer. This is to allow the base to blend a little bit more with the floor as we use them. Now keep in mind I'm just freestyling this. You can make whatever shape or base you want. I'm going to try and make anywhere between 6 inches to 3 inches. And you can see that I'm cleaning up as well. Here I'm using some C23 adhesive. This is quite strong stuff, really smells bad. No good for your lungs. And at the end of the day I tested it to see if it would work first, but no good. It didn't really stick to EVA foam, so I went ahead and got my glue gun out. The good faithful glue gun. It's really easy to use. Careful that you don't burn yourself. It is quite messy, but once you get a bit of practice in, you find it quite natural to use. It may make a few, plastic cobwebs, but you can easily rip them off as you go along. You can see that it's working out pretty well. I made a row of my first bricks on the cardstock, and the hot glue really stuck them down quite well. So I continue this process layer by layer, obviously freestyling this as I go. The more random the better, I think. And if you don't have a strong imagination, you can always look up some inspiration on Pinterest, Google images of ruined buildings and other terrain. Just make sure you don't burn yourself in the process. Step 2, we're going to use an old paintbrush and some cheap PVA glue I got from Kmart. We're just going to cover the majority of the surface just once, the base as well. And we're going to go ahead and use some sand. You can get some construction sand, or in this case decorative sand. I picked up almost a kilo's worth for $3 from Reject Shop. Colored black too, so that helps. Make sure that you spread it out evenly and don't put too much on. But if you do have a lot, just tap it on somewhere, most likely where you can catch the sand really. And if you miss a spot, add some more PVA glue and a bit more sand to cover it up. Remember, a little goes a long way here. Step 3, we're going to be adding some Mod Podge and some acrylic paint, some real cheap poster kids paint. We're going to do a 50-50 mix here and apply this Mod Podge and black paint mix all over the terrain itself. Don't forget to add the black paint to the base too, just to help it with warping and deformity. This pretty much seals the whole piece up, making sure that the pieces of sand from the PVA glue stay stuck. So here's a good representation of a different shape I made. Now I'm going to go ahead and add the grey coat. This is the first coat of paint apart from the black. I'm going to try and use some acrylic miniature paint here with a bit of washed ink. This is some game color ink from Vallejo. Mix it up with a bit of black ink just to see if I can get a nice grey. This is the first step I did. I realized after this that it was a bit too bright and a bit too strong of a grey as a base coat. So I do end up going over it later on in the video, but it's just good to show you the mistakes I made. Now moving on to attempting to do the mud and the brown colors. I used a tan from Vallejo again. This time I attempted to color in just the mud, but I realized just to tie it all in together, I dry brush the same color over the bricks. It did catch on most of the edges and most of the pebbles on the face of the bricks itself, but I wasn't really satisfied with the finish, so I went ahead and used some Citadel paints, a dry brush of a Tyrant Skull color. This was a lot brighter than the tan color from Vallejo, and I was pretty happy with that. So as I said earlier, I wasn't happy with the grey coat, so I'm going to be using an acrylic satin based paint, a craft paint, a lot cheaper than the Vallejo paints. I brushed this one on straight from the bottle, and it worked a lot better, and even though it does look like a stronger grey than before, the black wash later on will wash it down. I then end up using the same type of color as Tyrant Skull, but in a craft paint. I managed to load the brush with paint, but wipe most of it off on a paper towel. Then I go ahead and dry brush the same process as before. Making sure to catch all the fine edges of the pebbles and the edges of the bricks. Don't forget to hit the base as well. Next up is a burnt umber. I should have used the burnt umber before I put on the tan. I realized this after I made the actual piece, but it was already too late, so I went ahead and tried it with a thin brush, applying it to the base itself, but it took a while, so I ended up using a big brush eventually and used the burnt umber to cover the rest of the bricks as well, but a really dry brush. So this is the small batch that I created for the video. I've made a lot more, but I didn't have time to create them all. So step number 4, I think, is the black wash. Brought it outside, it was nice and hot in Sydney, so I ended up making a black wash mix inside a spray bottle. I thought this would be easier. I guess it's easier than using a paintbrush, a lot quicker in my eyes anyway. But don't know how effective it really is compared to a brush, so I'll use a brush for next time. Moving on to step 5, and the final step is applying their garnishings, I guess, with the vegetation and shrubbery. You can use any type of dressing really, but I got this stuff from Spotlight. It's fake moss, fake vines, very good because it's got some wire, and the tufts are from Wargamer. So you can see here I'm just using a bit of hot glue and squishing them down with some tweezers. A lot easier to handle, I reckon, instead of burning your hand on the hot glue. I think just less is more in a sense when you're dressing up some terrain. That's my key to it anyway. You can see that this moss style stuff I'm going to use as vines because the brown stuff is actually wires, so it's easy to really pull apart and detach the sections of the stuff that you want to use. Again, just get as creative as possible, rely on your imagination. It's always good to look at, again, resources if you get stuck. Here you can see me figuring out as to where they'd go. I just end up freestyling really as to where it goes, but again, just be creative with where you're going to be putting them. Using some hot glue and sticking it down always helps. I was going to use some different type of glue, but I figured hot glue works the fastest and looks clean if you can do it well, and I had no problems here. I just used some tweezers to push them into the gaps, the nooks and the crannies inside the bricks. I didn't end up using any of the moss. I thought the vines and the tufts were enough to dress up the terrain a little bit better, just to break the earthy greys and the browns a little bit. You can use any type of dressing that you do want to use. You can use some flowers for all I care, but it's totally up to you as to how you want your scattered terrain to look. Just make sure that you use the same type of dressing and vegetation across the whole set of terrain that you have. Episode 1 finally done. Adventuring Addicts is now officially a channel. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the content of that video and you stuck with me the whole entire way, thank you so much. I really appreciate your support on this channel, especially in its early stages. So hit that subscribe button if you want to join Adventurers Anonymous. That's what we're calling the fam now. And if you did enjoy the video, hit that like button. It really does actually help me, especially while I'm growing. Leave a comment. I will definitely read it 100%. Leave a constructive comment, some feedback about the video, about what I make. or even an idea. If you want me to make something, who knows, I can probably make that too. And hope you can join me here on Adventuring Addicts here. So you can join me by subscribing, hitting that subscribe button, and sharing my stuff would be probably the best way to support me at the moment. I'm probably going to be opening a Patreon, but I'm thinking about that in the long run. I'll be posting, you know, templates, my designs, I'll be selling some of my stuff, and that's pretty much it. There'll be more content on the way, either crafting or D&D related, obviously, because I am a player and a dungeon master too, so I hope to share some experiences with you guys from both perspectives of the game. And that's all I have to say. I'll see you guys all in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Peace. 2, 1, go.
Too much? One more time? No.
It rises too fast. Can you aim it downward?
Ready, 3, 2, 1. I think it's too under. Wait, leave it. Yeah, that's much better. That one was good.